We're here this afternoon with Steve Ogilvie, best known for his time at Orange Park High School as one of the two band directors there, and that's, of course, when I knew you.
Right.
And that's when we met. And so, Steve, just to start, maybe talk a little bit about, what brought you into band directing. How did you get into being a band director, and then what was your career path from there?
Well, I started playing band junior high, and I knew immediately I wanted to play. This is what I want to do forever. Up until that point, you're thinking doctor,
Right.
But from that point on, I knew. And my mother talked to Mr. Swatsell, Clyde Swatsell. He was at Kirby Smith. And
So you grew up in Jacksonville?
Grew up in Jacksonville, born and raised here. And so he said, well, you probably should get him a better clarinet. I had an old wood metal clarinet.
Wow.
And he says, piano lessons are always good. So he's got me a brand spanking new Vito clarinet. And next summer we got a piano, started piano lessons. So from that point on, I just wanted to be a musician. And of course, got in the band at Jackson. Took up saxophone in the stage band, and what they called it back then. Got in a rock and roll band when I was a junior, and we did quite well. Made a lot of money on that deal. Played 2 or 3 nights a week.
Wow.
Back then, if you wanted a rock band, you had to hire kids because the old guys didn't like it, didn't know how to do it, didn't care about it.
That's right.
So I just knew I wanted to play, and I knew I needed to learn more about it. And so when I was in the 8th grade, the FSU Symphonic Band came through town. Dr. Whitcomb, Manley Whitcomb, was the director. And Mr. Swatsell took us, and I taught with him a year, and I still call him Mr. Swatsell. But he took us, and I just knew that's where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to Florida State. So that's where I went to school when I graduated. And frankly, went with the idea I wanted to play. I did not think about I wanted to teach. I didn't march much in high school. I marched my sophomore year. But then my junior year, I'd always worn a leg brace and had polio. And I got so tired of that thing, I just took it off and threw it away and stuffed my shoes with stuff to make it work. And but then I couldn't march after that because the ankle was weak. So I never marched with the Chiefs or anything. But I went off just wanting to play. But they steer you into music ed. They strongly suggest that, So I finally gave up fighting it and got into music ed. And I enjoyed it, but I kind of did it with the whole time thinking, we'll see. I'll still want to try to play somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'd kind of gotten out of the rock and roll thing and the classical clarinet thing by that time. And I actually got admitted to Rosario Mazzeo's master class up at New England. Harry Schmidt, my clarinet teacher, was a student of his, but I didn't have the money to do that. I was married by this time, so came back to Jacksonville where I interned and had a nice internship. Enjoyed it. Was Landon Junior High.
Who was that with? Sorry to.
You hadn't asked. I'll think of it before. But anyway, it was the first year Landon was a junior high. And before that, it had been a junior, senior high, and so it was kind of new to that director also. But at any rate, I got to work with the beginners, had the woodwind class and stuff. And one thing I found out about that, we didn't tell them that I was a teacher, that I was just the normal guy, that I was an intern, rather.
Oh, yeah.
And so when the time was up, the last day, I just told them, well, guys, I'm not really a teacher, I'm an intern, and this is my last day, so be seeing you. I really enjoyed working with you. And they started crying.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my goodness, what have I done here? And realized how important you are to them, And that really hit home. But I found out then I could teach, and I kind of enjoyed teaching. But I graduated in the middle of the year, and there weren't any jobs open, so I worked for a music company for a while, the famous Marvin Kaye's Music Center. Ward Green followed me in there. In fact, we worked there a while together. That's where I first met him. But 68, the Arlington Junior High came open, and I was a friend of the guy there, and he recommended me, so I got that job. And listening to Paula's tape right before you came in, or her video rather, talked about she started out with a school with nothing and built it. Well,
Right.
I started the other way. That was a fine program I took over. It had always been very, very good junior high program. And I was able to keep it that way, which I was very proud of. I was there 4 years, and we always got ones at district. And we probably stayed there forever, but the last year I was here, we were going through school desegregation at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And they took my 7th grade out and put it at Douglas Anderson, as a matter of fact. That was a 7th grade center.
Pre-art school days.
Exactly. In fact, that's where Tommy started out. He was at Douglas Anderson when it opened up as Douglas Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
And,
right.
But I did not like not having my 7th grade. To me, that half the fun with junior high was you start them out, stay with them a couple of years,
right.
and get to enjoy the fruits of your labor. I wouldn't have wanted to just do 7th grade, but I did like doing that and keeping them. So Betty Ball had started at Sandalwood the year before that, and second year of operation, he wanted a junior high band director. And at that time, Sandalwood was the largest school in Florida under one roof.
Really?
3,800 kids.
Wow.
Junior high and senior high. And so it says, you be the junior high director, I'll be the senior high director. You can help me, I'll help you.
Mm-hmm.
We'll work together because we shared a band room. So
Oh, I didn't know that.
I only had the one band room. But that was a wonderful year. I really enjoyed that. Got to work with the senior high band quite a bit. And senior high band got straight ones at state that year. And it was just wonderful. Played the Shostakovich and the Tchaikovsky fourth.
Wow.
And that was a great year. But he left after that year. And the new fellow was a good director, but it just wasn't the same.
Sure.
And I was kind of burning out by that time anyway. The difference between Sandalwood and Arlington was a good, solid middle class school, and Sandalwood had some lower income areas that came from it. So it was kind of a different class of kid that I wasn't really quite used to working with, to be honest with you. So it just
back in those days, Arlington was the area,
it
wasn't
was.
it?
Yeah, Fort Carolina, Terry Parker, all that.
Yeah.
That area was. And so I was really just getting kind of burned out. So I left after that year. And got a part-time thing at Bowles. Started a little program at Bowles. And was working 6 nights a week in a steakhouse playing, which I loved that. And but started in the middle of the year at Bowles. And I started about 25 kids. And I think this is going to be great. I'm going to come back next year and add another 25, and this is going to work into a full-time thing. Come back the next year, 9 kids had signed up. And so I went around and asked every one of them, how come you didn't sign up again? I said, well, I really enjoyed last year. That was a lot of fun, but now I want to do some other stuff. And that seems to be the mindset of that class.
That's right.
The people. And so it's really hard to get something going and that. Well, in the meantime, the Sandalwood opened up again as a senior high. It was just a senior high by this time. No, it wasn't. It was still junior senior high. Clyde Swatsell was a junior high director. That's when I got to work with him. And still Mr. Swatsell. But he had the junior high. So I said, well, we'll give this a shot. And Buddy was working for Marvin Kaye. That seemed to be the
Wow. That's good. A lot of
way
you guys
things
went
went
through there, yeah.
But so Buddy helped me out with the marching stuff. He helped me with the shows. But that was back, you were still doing step twos and,
Right.
all that stuff. And but it still wore me out. And I didn't know how I was going to handle that. And in the meantime, Winford Franklin at Forrest had gone to the core style stuff. I'd never seen that before. How do you get kids to march in a circle and then all those flags and stuff going on rifles and like a 3-ring circus going on? I said, I got to go back to school to learn this stuff if I'm going to do it. Because I did not want to stay in marching band and not be up to date and. And so I didn't know what I was going to do. But over the summer, I was offered the saxophone teaching job part-time at JU.
Mm-hmm.
Al Rogers was there. And I got another 6-night-a-week playing gig. So I spent 1 year at Sandalwood, and mainly because of the marching. I love the concert end of it. I love the jazz end of it. But doing the marching by myself was just a little too much.
Yeah.
So for 6 years I did the JU thing and playing and stuff, and then heard about Orange Park opening up with Bert, and he was looking for an assistant. I said, that would be perfect, because I knew he did the marching and stuff. So
Was that the beginning of that school?
No.
Okay.
That school opened up way back in '64, I think.
Okay.
And the thing about Clay County was they never went through the throes of desegregation like Duval County. When Orange Park opened up, it opened up as an integrated school.
Gotcha.
So there was none of the stuff they had to go through here with that. And in fact, I had applied for a job there in '68, and the director there was looking for somebody with experience. So I didn't get it then. But I always saw Orange Park as kind of a sleeping giant. All these kids,
Yeah.
and succession of directors who had not done a great deal with it. And so Bert, it was kind of a strange situation. He had, while he was at Clay High, he was told the superintendent he was going to leave Clay High, and he wanted him to stay. So he said, what if I made you supervisor of music? And she can spend 2 hours a day with your band and then 3 periods a day as a supervisor.
Wow.
Got an appropriate raise and
That's
so
a
forth.
nice deal.
It was a nice deal. So he did that for several years, and the program at Orange Park was just falling apart. And the principal called him and said, Bert, would you please come take this thing over? So this, he was on the phone every day working with problems with parents and stuff. And Bert said, well, I've got to keep my supervisor thing. I'm not going to give that up. And so I'll have to have an assistant because it's too big for 2 programs, So I said, well, work it out this year, and then next year we'll get you an assistant. So he came in '82, and then '83 the job opened. I went and talked to him about it, and we were both on the same page philosophically. We both wanted the same things. Both decided that, or felt like it was important that you be good in marching, you be good in concert, and the concert should be the focal part of the program. And that's not always what the parents think, but that's where it needs to be.
Right.
And of course, the jazz thing was, we wanted it to be good too. So, and it worked out great. We tried different things over the years, but basically what it worked into was with the marching band, I did the music, rehearsed the music, taught the music and stuff, and then he did everything else. So I didn't have to worry with the flags, rifles, marching. I let him do the band parents.
That's a good deal.
Yeah, it was really great working with Bertie. We had a lot of fun together. In fact, I was thinking of somebody had asked me about some of the funny things that had happened. One of the years we were there, they had a great football team. In fact, about the only year we ever had a great football team. Got all the way up to the semifinals. Played Bradenton, down in Bradenton. And so we went down there, and first half we smoked them. I mean, we were winning big time. And so we went out and did our show, well received. Kids did a good job. Second half, they smoked us, and they wound up beating us. And sometime during the second half, some kid comes by with a bunch of Subway sandwiches. Says, here's your sandwiches. Says, what's that for? He said, I don't know. Said you ordered them, so okay. And so we thought maybe the band had them and had some left over because there was only about 50 sandwiches, and we had about 150 in the band.
Yeah.
So we knew we were going to have to divvy them up there. But well, thank you very much. So we ate them. Got back to school, and Monday morning, Bert comes in. We had to go in through the faculty lounge, and standing there was the principal, head football coach, the athletic director.
Oh no!
You ate our sandwiches. And I was supposed to be for the football team.
Yeah.
And we enjoyed those sandwiches. They all laughed about it. I think Bert had to line the field the rest of the year.
Right.
But that kind of stuff happened, and we really had a lot of fun there together, and it was a good program, very very good program. And I think had that not come along, I don't know if I would have really gotten back into teaching. So you asked originally how I got into to the band directing. I was kind of in and out of until Orange Park, and then that was such a good deal for us that I said, well, I can do this till I retire.
Well, I know you guys have been out of there for a while now. What year did you retire from there?
2009.
Yeah.
But I pretty much weaned myself out of band about the beginning of the 2000s, about the time Bert left and went to Fleming Island.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And when they finally got us a new band room built, they turned the old band into a piano lab, old band room. And nice lab. They sunk everything, all the wires and everything. They came up to 2 consoles up at the front desk, so you could be up there and listen to anybody you wanted to. You could talk to them. You know, kids could practice on their own, and you could still check on them and stuff. And when I first got it over, we had the small 60-key Yamahas.
Right.
But I eventually got all clavinovas like this, and that was way cool.
Yeah.
And so I had 3 piano classes and AP Music Theory, which I really loved doing. That was a lot of fun, and I kept the jazz class, which kind of got to be just an after-school thing. That's the only time we could really do it. So that was kind of hit and miss there towards the end. But
well, even though it's been a while, I mean, I even remember being in Gainesville. That's when I first, heard about Orange Park High School, and you guys were. I mean, I think your names will always be synonymous with that program, even though it's been a while since you two were there. I mean, you guys really had a great thing going there.
There was most of the 80s and 90s. It was really a kicking program. But there were a lot of good programs in that district at that time. Gainesville High School was always Martha Stark. I miss her. She's one of my favorite band directors of all time. And of course, Paula coming in later. In fact, Paula was in Newberry when we started there.
That's right.
I got to judge her band, the Buchholz group in Sarasota. She went out of district one year, and I did sight reading, and all 3 of them.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, you don't have any kids to.
That's right.
And they were all great. But
so in the years that you were working with Bert in Orange Park, and there were great things, but what were maybe some challenges that were there challenges that you had to deal with either professionally or musically?
Well, things were always changing in Clay County as far as districting, where kids were going to go and so forth. When we were first there, we got all the kids from Orange Park Junior High and all the kids from Lakeside, and about half of them from Ridgeview. And then Ridgeview became a high school, so we lost those kids. Most of the Lakeside kids wound up going to Clay High at one point. So just, the feeder thing kind of shifted around. You never knew where you were going to get. That was always a challenge. And some years you don't have any tubas, so you got way too many saxophones. So guess what, guys? We're going to have fun learning a new
That's right.
a new instrument.
That's
So
right.
there was always that challenge. You don't ever have perfect instrumentation. Some years you have good double reeds, some years you don't. So
Right.
when you don't have the good double reeds, and you don't do, La Fiesta del Pacifica, that kind of stuff. So that was always a challenge. And the band room was a huge challenge till they finally built us a new one. I don't know if you ever saw that old
I
band
didn't.
room.
I've never been in there.
It was about the size of this living room. Yeah. I'm not exaggerating. Yeah. And, we had 180-piece marching bands in there.
Right.
And we'd get, when we started there, they had 2 air conditioners. Just totally inadequate. Totally inadequate. And I mean, it was just impossible you weren't comfortable ever. They finally put a central air in that helped, but it was still way too small.
So they had just a window unit or something when you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so at any rate, we kept getting moved around on the priority list. We'd get down to 3, and then they'd bump us back up to 6 or something. Well, June, and I can never think of her last name. She was with the state.
June Hinckley.
June Hinckley.
Yeah.
Came over one week, and she was just meeting with various people over here. And the deputy superintendent took her around, and she wanted to see Orange Park, see Bert and me. And she walked in the band room, and her jaw hit the floor. And she looked at the superintendent and said, "You mean to tell me the Orange Park High School band is rehearsing in this room?" And he kind of, well, yeah.
Wow.
And she said, "I'll tell you what, in 10 years, you're both going to be deaf, and you're going to have a lawsuit on your hands."
That's right.
And so we moved up the
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
priority list, and we finally got our new band room, and which unfortunately was towards the end of our tenure there. I only got to spend a couple of years.
Did they let you guys have input in the design and everything?
A lot.
Good.
In fact, we were there with the architect. One day Bert wasn't around. He didn't know I did this. They were going to make the practice room doors, just regular old wooden doors with that much.
Oh.
And I said, that's useless.
Yeah.
And the architect said, well, that's what the state calls for. And what they were doing was converting the old cafeteria. We had two cafeterias, the main and then what they call the west cafeteria. And so they were converting that. And I said, I'll tell you what, you give me a couple of parents and a sledgehammer, and I'll fix it up like I want it. We won't even need you to do anything.
Wow.
And architect kind of got a little huffy there. So we got all winger practice rooms.
Nice.
Where you could send a kid back there and not hear them. They couldn't hear
That's
you.
right.
And you could actually use them for practice rooms. What a concept.
Yeah.
And had an ensemble room and stuff. So it really was a nice, and we did get some input. The ceiling was a little bit lower than the state called for, but they really couldn't do anything about that. So they let Winger come in and acoustically treat it. So they had that stuff all over the walls.
Right.
And it really was a nice setup. Good storage. We got to plan what we wanted for storage and office area and stuff. And had an executive washroom in our office.
That's always nice.
The kids made a sign up, executive washroom.
One of the things for me, when I was first starting out, was your influence on me in teaching jazz.
Oh, really?
And the jazz band when I was in Ocala. And so maybe talk a little bit about you and jazz band, because of all the things that you've done and have done well, that was kind of a little bit of a niche for you, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and I didn't really plan it that way. Didn't set out to be the world's greatest jazz band director. Not that I ever was, but concert was always what I consider myself to be. But when I was over at JU, they had a program called Jazz Unlimited. Kids could sign up for it, and the director of it just played. That's all they did was play stuff. And if you knew how to play, how to improvise going in there, you were fine.
Yeah.
But if you didn't, you just sat on the sides and watched everybody else do it. So a bunch of kids came to me and asked me if I would teach a beginning improv class. I said, gosh, because when you do that kind of stuff, you don't know why you do what you do.
Right.
Just
Now you
play
got
by
to
ear.
explain it to somebody.
Yeah, it's like the old Duke Ellington show. The guy goes into the Ellington band and says, "What are we playing?" "Just play something." Says, "Well, how will I know if it's right?" So if it sounds good, do it again.
Right.
So you just kind of learn by trial and error. But so I started putting together materials. I went through a lot of the Jamie Abersol things, and so I put together a course. So that's how I got into actually teaching jazz, because I never took any jazz thing in my life, any course on it. Now, so when I went to Orange Park, Bert and I were going to kind of split up the jazz band. I said, "Why don't you let me do the jazz band?" So, okay. So that first year, we had some great kids, and even that first year, in fact, one of the trumpet players made All-State, and so we got straight ones at district and state.
Your first year.
First year, yeah. And it was, I've had a knack of getting into really good programs along the way.
Yeah.
But, and I didn't know that the charts I was doing were the ones I wanted to do. You hear back then they'd send you the records and
That's
stuff. Oh, I want to do that one. And we were buying music from a fellow down in Central Florida. I forget his name. And he said, "You do it. Can you handle that?" "Yeah, we can do those." Okay. So apparently not everybody was doing that level.
Right. The Jensen Professional
Exactly.
series. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Big charts, he called it.
That's right.
So, but at any rate, and you learn as you go. You listen. The thing about jazz, you just listen. That's the only thing you can do. And every year at State, I would listen to the clinicians and learn from them. Then when Dwayne Hendon became president, FBA president, he asked me if I would do the All-State jazz band. And then I really started learning.
Yeah.
Because, from picking the guy up at the airport to being with him every rehearsal to
That's right. That's right.
setting the place up for the concerts, to all of that, you were totally involved. And I did that for 8 years.
Wow.
And, so learned a great deal from that. So that, just talking to people, listening to their bands, and because to be honest with you, there weren't really that many great jazz bands around, so it was pretty easy to get around to hear the, New World down in Miami with Roby. It's a great program, and several like that. Martha always had a good program at Gainesville High School. You wouldn't think of her as being a jazzer, but they were just good in everything.
Yeah, that's right.
And so that's kind of how I got into that end of it. I never set out to be the jazz guru, but it just kind of worked out that way. And I still love jazz. Always have loved jazz.
Yeah.
I've always played it. In retirement, I plan to keep on playing, but stuff happens, and
Right.
you wind up in a wheelchair. But
In all of those years, in any genre, whatever, are there things that stand out, like musical high points or great performances that really stand out in your mind? Maybe a high point or something that really was very special for you with kids.
And this is going to sound really weird. It was just a rehearsal, and it was with the second band. Bert always did the wind ensemble. I do the second band. If we had enough, we do the third band. And for some reason, they'd been messing around that day. They were just getting on my nerves. And we were working on Londonderry there, the old Danny Boy thing. And they just weren't doing it. And I really got mad and read them the riot act. And about that time, the cheerleader sponsor, nice lady, English teacher, comes in. And when people come into the band room, they tend to think that it's all fun and games.
Right, they don't know.
No.
That's right.
And so she doesn't know my head's steaming at that. The purple vein, as kids said, once they saw the purple vein coming,
Right.
they knew it was serious. And so she kind of sat down and back, and we played through that. Absolutely magnificent performance. Magnificent. Everybody's here was standing up on the end of it. And so let's see. And Kathy Brannon, the teacher, she's back there crying. I've never heard anything so beautiful. Well, you should have heard before.
Right. Right.
But of all the things, and a lot of great performances and everything and so forth. But that one sticks out because we really, really made music that day.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that it was in a rehearsal. I've heard many people say that sometimes their most memorable moments were in the rehearsal. Something about that.
Yeah. Performances, I tend to not remember when I, from the time I get up there till I leave, I just try to block that out.
Right.
What on there? One of the state jazz things, Dennis, what was his last name? De Blasio. He was a bari sax player with Maynard Ferguson, and he was a scat artist.
Okay.
And the FBA president, I'm trying to think who it was, down in Naples, where he was from.
Not Jerome.
Jerome. Jerome had booked him to play with the state jazz band.
Okay.
So it's fine with me. And so he got up in the middle of one tune and he started scatting. And he's, that was in rehearsal. He says, and tonight I'm just going to have some of you do it. Well, there was one trombone player, I think he played about third trombone. He's very shy, never heard him say a word. And he was the first one Dennis grabbed anyway.
Jeez.
So, and kids got I can't do this, come on up. So he came up, and so he'd do like a call and response thing. And the kid, and then kind of a light went on, and the kid gets it, and he just nails it.
Wow.
Two of them there, it was unbelievable. Had never done it before.
Wow.
You would have never thought, and that probably brought him out of a shell. You know, that experience probably stayed with him the rest of his life in any walk of life thing
That's right.
he went into. You know,
That's right.
it was just remarkable to see that happen. That light went on. It was like, oh, this is how you do it.
That's really neat.
So that was cool. Things like that, you know,
Yeah.
that happened totally unplanned. You know,
Right. We hope that our young directors are going to be watching these videos and trying to learn from their elders, and I mean that in the most respectful sense of that word. So for young people who are hopefully watching and trying to learn a little bit about you and from you, what advice would you give to guys who are just starting out, trying to make their way in this world?
one of the things I always did, whether it was back in the Sandalwood days or Arlington Junior High days or whatever, especially once I got to Hearns Park, is go to as many of the state FMEA things, and don't just pal around with the folks and hang out. Go to those rehearsals where these high-powered college, whatever, directors are rehearsing the band. You learn so much from that. I mean, these are the best musicians in the state at that level, and these are world-class conductors doing it. And I cannot tell you the number of hours I sat in these rehearsals listening to them. Any workshops that pop up. I was talking about Bentley a while ago. Bentley back in the 80s did a 2-week workshop for band directors at Florida State. And there was about 10 of us in there. Terry Pattershaw was in, several other people. And it was wonderful. Dr. Croft had a conducting thing every day for about an hour. Mm-hmm. Bentley did a thing on marching. Charlie Carter came in and gave us arranging.
Jeez.
What a trip that was.
Yeah.
And in fact, he gave us a bunch of material like that. Here's how you arrange. You do it that way, and it sounds like a Charlie Carter piece.
Right.
And and he had all the different private teachers come in and talk about their particular instrument and stuff. And Dr. Cliff Madsen, have you ever heard of him?
Oh yeah.
Probably the primo music researcher, music ed researcher, education researcher in the world, came in every day, and I cannot tell you the stuff I learned from.
That's amazing.
From him.
The access that you had to all those
people. Yeah, 5 days a week.
That's awesome.
July 4th fell in there, and I said, we're not taking July 4th off Bentley. No. So, I mean, and that was a great experience. And if any young person coming into it, those kind of things happen. Mallory Thompson down at South Florida did a 2-week thing. 1 week she had Donald Hunsberger from Eastman, and the next week she had Cooperin, who was at Cincinnati at that time. And here's what we had to do. We had to conduct a piece. There was about 30, 40 works out there, and we could pick our own piece. We were our own band that we conducted. And they would tape it. And he would make a running commentary while you were doing it. And you would do that, then you take that tape up and go listen to it. Most painful experience of my life. One thing I never realized I was doing was, ready? And Hunsberger said, I did that, and he goes, okay, let me invite you to play.
Right.
That kind of thing. And little things you do, you don't really understand. Dr. Croft had a thing about band director's disease. Did you ever hear him talk about that? About the rebound. You get to. You look at that from the side, you can't tell what's going.
Right. That's right.
Get the rebound out of it. Little things.
Yeah.
And that's worth the 2 weeks alone. But
that's right.
But these things you pick up. One of the things I remember about Hunsberger is they had a contract with Sony, and every few years Sony took them over to Japan and to tour and give a concert. And there's something about the Japanese language and how they learn to speak and so forth. Doesn't let them say Hunsberger.
Oh wow!
They can't do it. He said the closest they could come was Hunsberger. And I just thought that was so funny. And I've had several Japanese exchange students, and I always thought about that. I never said that around, but I always thought about that. That and there are certainly things I can't say, you know, in Japanese.
Sure.
So, but Cooperin was wonderful, very nice. I mean, just and people at that level are, for the most part, nice and want to help, and
Yeah.
and so if I could say one thing to any young band director, teacher, or whatever, go to these workshops and go to your FMEA summer thing, FBA summer thing. I went to a AP music theory workshop up in New York City, Manhattan.
Oh,
Manhattan College, not the conservatory, the college, which is up in the Bronx.
okay.
You figure that out.
Right.
But and one thing I learned there was I didn't have a limit on the number of kids that could sign up, and I didn't call who could sign up. I would say, you really need to play an instrument, know how to read music.
Right.
That would be the
Right.
basic thing there, which cut a few guitar players out.
Yeah.
But so I'd have as many as 22 in a class, and the end of the year when they took the test, I'd have 1, 2, 3 make a 1, and a few make a I'm not a 1 but a 5.
Mm-hmm.
A few make a 4, a few, that sort of thing. Mostly 3s, few 2s, but the teacher of the class up in New York had always had all of his kids, 100% of them, get a 5
Wow.
every year for a bunch of years running. I'm thinking, how do you do that? Well, here's what he did. First of all, he only took 5 kids at a time,
Oh, there you go.
and he screened them very carefully. They had to, be at the top of their whatever, chorus, band, orchestra, whatever.
Right.
Number 2, they had to take 2 years.
Interesting.
1 year of pre-AP,
Right.
and where he didn't have to, when he got to AP, he could really concentrate on the AP stuff.
Yeah.
And then if he didn't think they could pass the test, then they didn't take it.
Wow.
I'm thinking, well, I could do that.
Right. That's right. Right.
But I'm not going to. I mean, we're still going to. Wasn't exactly a y'all come class, but it was still open to the,
Sure.
Always had piano players that weren't involved in band or chorus and stuff. But those are the kind of things you learn at these things that you'd never know, without going to them. Besides learning a lot from how he did things. But that would be my biggest piece of advice is just to go to as many of these workshops. And like Ward said on his thing, Ward and I used to go work with each other's bands. And it's just great to hear other bands. It's great for someone with
That's right.
other different set of ears come in and hear. They're going to hear something that you don't normally hear. And that's the great thing about the band director fraternity. We're all. I don't think I've ever asked anybody for help that I didn't get it.
That's right.
Even Jack, when he was down at Lakeland, asked me to come down and work with his jazz band. So cool. What I really wanted to do was go hear
Right.
was hear his band rehearsal.
That's right.
Which I did. I got there early enough to do that.
Yeah.
And so I mean that, and he came up and worked with our groups. And you're always going to find people ready, willing, and able to help. And at the beginning, you're not going to know it all. You may have that passion and desire, but there are things you can only learn
That's right.
through experience. So that would be my biggest.
You're talking about people that have been an influence on you, and from me, and you being an influence on me when I was starting out, and for all the people that you've influenced, thank you for that, because I thought I knew about how to do jazz band, and I learned a lot from you about how to do it better, and so I'm grateful for that, as I'm sure many of us are. So thank you, Steve, for your influence on band directors and our profession, and thank you for your time sharing your story with us today.
You're certainly welcome. Thank you.